Hey everybody, how's it going? So this is Narja, the new character that just came out in Chaos Zero Nightmare. And I would go as far to say that she's not really a support. She's kind of a little bit of everything in the entire game and is actually really cool. This is the first controller character we've gotten since the launch of the game. Every single character has just been a DPS since launch, even starting from the first banner with Haru, but this is the first character that's supposed to be more of a support role. So how is she really? Well, let's talk about how I would go about building her, some of her cards, and then overall feelings. So for partner, I'm currently using Gaia. I don't think you have to get this partner, but I do think it's pretty great. The amount of damage increase you get is pretty nice because even though Narja is a support and a controller, she's also kind of a heavy damage dealer at the same time in AoE somewhat too. And the final effect right here might not seem that crazy, which is 3 EP to be able to do a 60% defense-based damage times 4. Let me move my camera out of the way real quick, which it might not seem that amazing, but in Narja's setup can actually pump and do a lot of damage. Now, if you're not going to use Gaia, I would probably either use Nyx or Alyssa. Alyssa, when you have max dupe of this, is able to give 24% combatant defense increase, which is kind of a ton, and the heal is kind of nice too. Nyx, obviously, everyone loves to use, mainly because of this 4-cost Hurricane, where you get to discard cards and get new cards in your hand. Really good outside of Chaos especially. Overall, I'd probably use those, but if you're really trying to go mega damage, then I guess Gaia is really nice. Now, as for potentials, it's kind of the usual. You obviously want to get this thing that buffs whatever card here. It's nice in Chaos. You're going to want to upgrade her unique cards a bunch because that's what most of her damage scales off of. You're going to want to get both of these. This, I believe, increases the base defense, which can be pretty good, but every time I upgrade it, I only get 3 defense, which feels terrible for how much you have to farm. Crit chance, obviously, is amazing. This thing is not the biggest deal, in my opinion, with the heal, because it's on your basics, but this is obviously really important. The amount of damage increase this gives is kind of huge. It's also really easy to hit 300 defense overall, so I highly recommend it. Now let's talk about the memory fragments. So I'm using two sets. I'm not going 2 because the third set doesn't really matter. Like, you would go either attack set or health set or basic card set, something like that. Not the most important, so I'd rather use a broken set with just 2 really good pieces. So obviously the left side pieces are always the same, but the neck, I went for crit chance. Then the cup, I went for instinct damage. Notice I'm going crit rate, crit damage on everything. And then as for the 6th piece, I went defense percent main stat because she's a defense scaler that does damage and healing based off of that. Went for as much crit and crit damage as I possibly could. I got really lucky on my rolls on gear. That's why she has such absurd stats at this much defense with this much crit rate, crit damage. She has 200 crit damage without a single point of that being in potential, which is kind of absurd. Next, let's talk about Manifest Ego. So, the first dupe is okay, nothing really crazy. The second dupe is pretty nice, but I don't like the RNG element of it. The fact that it's inconsistent kind of makes me think that it's really not that big of a deal. If this was like a 50%, I would think it's crazy. But 25%, 1 in 4, it's nice, but I really don't think it's like a game changer as much as some of the second dupe is on some other characters. It's nice, but not the biggest deal. Third one is the usual where it just buffs the ult a little bit. And then the fourth one is actually pretty big. The 30% damage amount to predation is really good, but you also have to keep in mind you don't get crazy amounts of predation. So even though it's strong, unless you have like an insane build that is constantly upkeeping that, most of the time it's not going to feel super huge. This one does the usual buffing of those cards, basic, unique, and common. And then the final one. This one, it seems like a nice damage boost and nice heal, but I really don't find it necessary. I would say when it comes to a lot of these characters, dupes can be pretty big, but on her, it doesn't feel necessary. It feels kind of useless most of the time, I would say. I don't really think chasing dupes has any purpose in this character. So if you're a whale, go for it if you really like them. I really don't think it's necessary. If you're someone like Rich Campbell, then you should probably buy all of them because you're a filthy whale. But if you're just a normal human or, you know, just don't want to spend $1,000 for no reason, then I would say no. Also, really quickly, can we just talk about the fact that Gaia, in my opinion, looks better than Narja? I know that might be a hot take to some, but this is the most over-designed partner I've ever seen in the game. They 100% look like they were playable, but for some reason, they did this and they made Narja the main one. I'm just saying. Look, it's just my opinion. That's all. I think she looks a little bit better. Now let's talk about her cards. So here is one of the coolest things about Narja and what makes me really, really enjoy this character. She is maybe the most flexible character in the entire game, where it feels like she can be used in many different ways. So many characters in this game, it's like there's one build, and if you don't do that, you're an idiot, basically is how it feels. And I think that's a big downside to Chaos Zero Nightmare compared to some other kind of deck building games where it feels like there's a lot more flexibility of like, oh, I'm going to use this build this time, or oh, now I'll try this build. And I think that's due to save data especially. But she has a lot of different paths she can go down. So you can build her as just a pure DPS using stuff like Shackles of Hunger, which actually hits really hard. You might only see 34% defense-based damage, but that actually scales incredibly hard. But you could also do something, for instance, like this, which buffs the damage of the next hit, and this works on allies too. So especially if you get a big damage boost like this, and they're a multi-hit character, so for instance, someone maybe like Chizuru, who hits a bunch of times, then this can be incredibly strong. Hell, even Mei Lin can get a big boost out of that. So I wouldn't really say there's a best in slot one, because it depends on your build. Like this one is pretty cool too. I actually had a build where I had 3 copies of this with the God Epiphany of vulnerability for 2 stacks when you use it. And at the start of every single turn, I would just get this back. I was literally spamming this nonstop and getting it back because after you activate 3 Veracities, the next turn you get it back in your hand. So I got to spam it basically the same as Serennial Lasers, which is incredibly good. This one, potentially you could combo if you need high shields, but in general, I don't really think that's that useful. And this one, if you want to go a crazy scaling damage build, if you're actually able to get that much Veracity, which I think can be really fun. Now, Bottomless Hunger, this thing essentially works like Mika. You're able to reduce the cost of 2 random cards in hand for 1 turn, which essentially can be equivalent to Mika giving you 2 AP. So it's actually kind of insane. So she's able to replace Mika in this way. She's essentially doing the same thing, which is incredibly strong. But you could also decide, no, I'd rather do this instead, get a ton of Veracity and a huge damage boost to Mealtime, Epic Mealtime over here, when you use your Veracity, which can be pretty fun too. Just the 7 Veracity can be really big just to get that big boost super early on. I don't really like the unique that much, but I do think this one also has a lot of strength to it because I believe this works on the entire team. So Amir is a character that's generally really trashy, right? People don't really think she's that good. She has not really had much time to shine. Well, Amir has attacks that have multi-hit, and she has a big nuke that can multi-hit. Maybe she could potentially be useful with something like this, but also it could mean, what if you use a team of full defense scalers? So using like Narja and Kalipe and Maribel or something like that, and you're able to increase the damage of your entire team. Also, I've been on for 7 hours because I'm a loser and I have no life, and the game really wanted to tell me that. Thanks, Smilegate. But anyways, this can be really good if you wanted to buff an entire team of defense scalers. It could actually be really, really fun to take advantage of. I had a build where I had this with the God Epiphany of draw a card, and I had 3 of these in the deck. So I could keep using it, and then eventually use that card that hits 4 times, and it just completely nuked anything. And that also scaled with Gaia, who hits 4 times. So I used her ability and hit for like 3,000 to 4,000 damage on a partner 3 cost ability, which is pretty crazy, right? So there's so much flexibility, as you can see, with how she works. Now there's this ability, right? Gives a bunch of Veracity or Predation. Veracity is usually relatively easy to get because a lot of things give it, but Predation is not as easy. You usually have to use something like Mealtime to be able to get that, but it gives a really big damage boost. So obviously you want to try and get as much of that as possible using a card like this potentially. This is also really strong. Being able to manipulate your deck is always really good. So moving this to hand and getting out of the deck so you don't have to draw it is really strong, but then also being able to get morale, just a 60% damage boost, really good too. Makes her really good in support situations too, just cleaning out the deck really hard. The problem is though, since you don't get that Veracity and Predation, you might want to copy the card before you evolve it, which obviously is not that easy. And hell, you can use something like this with Serennial, and you can put it on one of those lasers that you get at the start of every single turn, and you're literally able to just do this every turn and get 1 predation, which could be really strong potentially, but it is a one-time use. And then this thing seems completely ridiculous with Chizuru and Mei Lin, who really care about basic attacks and just spamming it. You non-stop get Veracity, and then you get a damage boost permanently. Really strong, I think. I think there's a lot of potential with that. So she's good with defense scaling teams. She's good with multi-hit teams. She's good with characters that like basic attacks. She's also a healer and an AoE damage dealer at the same time. And also, you may have noticed that almost all of her cards say unique on it, right? You have epiphanies where almost all of them have unique, right? So you could literally be the best deck farming character in the entire game on this character because you turn all of them into unique, so now you can't copy them at all the copy events. So it becomes way easier to actually build a deck as well. Now there's this next one that also has a unique effect, but it increases the tenacity damage dealt, which can be really good with Serennial, but even if it's not Serennial, it just makes it way easier to actually break the enemy's bar, which I think is good in general. Most characters want to do that. Now, what is the best one here? Well, I really like this one if you're making her a damage dealer or if you're trying to buff the damage of other defense scalers. Just plus 100% defense-based damage is kind of insane for 2 turns. That's a huge buff. Also hits for a pretty good amount of damage as well. The other one that I think can be kind of fun is this. It's kind of like Kayron's Black Hole. And if you're actually able to activate it, I've nuked things for like easily 5,000 damage with this, which is pretty crazy. So I think she can really be a crazy damage nuker for a character that also is healing me for like 600 at the same time. It's a little bit absurd. So she's replacing Mika and Calipe sort of at the same time in some ways. And then finally we have Mealtime, which it does a good amount of damage, heals a ton, gives you Predation, which is that damage buff for your team. And also keep in mind it's Retain. It's really nice that she has retain cards, so you don't feel forced to use them. They're going to sit in hand. There's a lot of characters that feel like they're kind of janky to use because of that. And then finally, her ego skill, actually pretty good. A lot of characters have terrible ults that are just do a little bit of damage, and that's it. This one's really good. 10 stacks of Veracity, especially when it's not that easy to get it all the time. The damage is nice, but not really the craziest thing. It's not the focal point of it. And then Mealtime in the graveyard, you get 5 Predation. That's crazy. So if you use Mealtime and then use this right after, you're now at 9 Predation and 10 Veracity. Incredibly strong. So how is this character all in all? I think Narja is probably the best support character I've seen in the entire game. I think she's absurdly strong pretty much anywhere because she can be built as the damage dealer. She can be built as the healer. She can be built as sort of like a mixture of the two. The only thing she can't really do is draw cards. That's where she's weak, and there's plenty of characters that can do that. So the team that I was using that feels like it might be her best is I was using Serennial, because she's completely broken, and also just pairs well with Narja. Serennial, Narja, and Veronica. Veronica is a god tier card draw character, really works in any setup, and I feel like Narja is similar. I think you can use both of them in almost any setup. I think Narja feels like a mixture between Mika and Rei, and both of those are pretty much the best 2 support, full-on support characters in the entire game. So I think that's kind of ridiculous. I think you can also run her amazingly with Chizuru. I think you can use her amazingly with Mei Lin. I think she pairs potentially with some sort of Calipe and Magna team, which would be really fun. Other than those characters, I'm not sure how many truly shine with her. Possibly someone like Tressa, but she kind of works with everyone as well. We'll have to see what they do in the future too, but I think she has a lot of future potential as well. Because really, being good with basic attacks, being good with multi-hits, being good with defense scalers, well, that's probably like half of all characters that are going to come out in the game in the future. And she's good with farming decks as well. So I don't think anyone would really regret pulling this character. I think that Haru and Chizuru and Yuki, they felt pretty weak to a lot of people until Serennial came around and completely shattered that expectation, which was completely crazy. She was absolutely broken, but she was also a limited character. This character is not limited. You can pull her at any time at random. But do you want to take that chance? I'm not sure. I don't think you have to pull this character, but I do think that this character is absolutely worth pulling and probably going to be one of the most useful characters on your account the moment that you pull them. They're very fun to play as well as an added bonus. And that's really the most important thing in this game, all in all. So anyways, thanks a bunch for watching this. Hope you enjoyed my little review of Narja. She's really fun, and I hope to see you next time.